Okay, good morning, councillors and staff. Welcome to the Executive Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting for the month of November. I'd like to now open the meeting at 9 a.m. With the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. Okay, doesn't look as though we'd have any requests for leave of absence or any apologies. Great to see everyone here. I'll now invite Councillor Duff to recognise our traditional owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the traditional owners of the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka people, and acknowledge the elders both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors, we've all got the agenda in front of us. Does anyone have any prescribed or declarable conflict of interest to disclose to the meeting? Okay, no? All right. Let's proceed. 5.1, minutes of the Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting held on the 13th of October 2021 can be found at 5. Recommendation is that the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 30th of October be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Secondly, Councillor Jones. Do we have any speakers? Any? Okay. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6 and 7 at 15. Do we have any business arising or general business pursuant to the minutes? If not, we'll progress. 8.1. I'll now take time to present the Corporate Services, People and Culture, Communications, Media, Finance and ICT Portfolio Report. That's at page 16 on the agenda. Okay, good morning everyone. And in terms of corporate services, last month hosted neighbouring local governments for the first face-to-face South East Queensland Governments Forum in 2021, and the forum was well attended by Lockyer Valley, Southern Downs, Western Downs and Toowoomba regional councils, with guest speakers from McDonald's Law. The program included discussions on fraud and corruption identification, prevention complaints management, as well as delegations and authorised persons, processes and systems. Council's policy governance framework has been recently extended to include all council forms, and council forms are now put through a governance review with form owners consulted before approval from the Chief Executive Officer. The business rules which underpin the framework are now applied to all council policies, procedures and forms. This financial year, Corporate Services, in partnership with the Senior Management Team, are currently reviewing or have reviewed 48 forms, 43 procedures and 42 policies. A significant body of work. Congratulations, Manager, under the guidance of your General Manager. Thank you. People and Culture, Employee Satisfaction and Business Improvement Survey. The Senior Management Team is proud to provide a snapshot of our debut survey, available as an attachment to this report. The snapshot allows some real feedback on what staff are thinking, feeling and saying in relation to their work at South Burnett Regional Council. It is understood that this is the first time since the formation of the Council, of the Regional Council, that such a survey of staff has been undertaken, and it is planned that this is the first of many going forward. For those mathematicians out there, when reviewing the answers to some questions, please remember that questions could be skipped, so it might not all add up. And can I say a warm thank you to our CEO for your leadership in relation to that very important initiative. School-based traineeships, expression of interest. Recently, high schools within the South Burnett were encouraged to discuss with their current grade 10 students an excellent opportunity to join Council in 2022, undertaking a school-based traineeship in the fields of administration, horticulture and civil construction. Council is pleased to advise we have received 14 expressions of interest, and the process will now be undertaken to shortlist the candidates and begin the recruitment process. Could I once again, Mr CEO, thank you sincerely for the work that you and your People and Culture team have done in relation to offering those school-based traineeships. Okay, now on to communications and media. And in October 2021, the media and communications team progressed the following: 28 media releases, 7 media inquiries, 73 Facebook posts, 17 LinkedIn posts, and 16 Instagram posts, 1 e-news article, 3 printed advertisements, and 7 graphic design documents. A list of all media releases, inquiries, and statistics for October is available as an attachment to this report. And can I again thank our Mr. CEO, your communications and media team, which is really Grace, and I must say that she's doing an outstanding job in her very first year with us in this role. The annual financial reports for both the Council and the South Burnett Community Hospital Foundation were signed off by the external auditors and the Queensland Audit Office during October, with the Council's full annual report to be uploaded to the website during November. Council's cash holdings at the end of October landed at $46.774 million, with $25.721 million of this being restricted and $21.053 million being free cash. End of month figures are currently being finalised and will be provided to Council in the November Council meeting. Rates: total rate searches completed for September were 196 and October 188. The total number of transfers for new ownership was 219 in September and 225 in October, and this is expected to increase as we approach the Christmas period in November. The number of customer requests and tasks completed were 300 for September and 360 for October. New tasks and requests received were 213 in September and 158 in October. Water meter readings are now planned to commence from early December for the next rate notices to be issued in February 2022. And again, Madam General Manager, please pass on my sincere thanks and from Council for the tremendous work that Finance have been doing, both in terms of bringing those financial statements through audit to fruition, and also, of course, the work being done in the Rates Department with what has been a very busy time, clearly. With that, I'd now like to move that my report to Council be received. Thank you. Okay, back to the Chair. Seconder. Thanks, Councillor Henson. All right, does anyone have any questions, any speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Just in terms of the employee satisfaction and business improvement survey, probably would really appreciate from CEO Mark in terms of your views, processing and embedding some of the learnings from the survey, benchmarking in terms of what's next, like when are we planning our next survey, and sort of understanding some of the responses a little bit further. I think all in all, it's great that we've done that survey, but I'd certainly like to hear some of your insights and recognising how important culture is to an organisation, particularly from, as they say, culture eats strategy. So really appreciate some insights from you, CEO Mark. I do have some further questions following that.
Thanks, Councillor. Being the inaugural one, firstly, the bit I would acknowledge is a 51% turnout rate for a volunteer survey. We were ecstatic. Yes, there's 49% of the organisation that didn't respond. So, but being voluntary, for the very first time, we would have actually been sort of benchmarked to about 20 to 30%. We would have been happy enough with that as a sample. So it gave us a good view. Fundamentally, the staff that responded, my job makes good use of my abilities, I have the right equipment, there's ups and downs and all those. I believe I'm doing a good job. The survey itself is relatively positive all the way through. Structure, which is one that we'll have a closed session report to the Ordinary Council of Meeting to discuss where we go with the structure. So it was good the survey informed what a consistent thought is that whilst the structure is not bad, there is certainly improvements that we can do, and there's a lot of areas that improve. With any organisation, you will get a percentage that are either disengaged or dissatisfied, and to a certain degree, it's not to say that you can't solve those issues, but they are the harder ones. The ones that we're particularly looking at are the ones in almost the neutral sort of that middle ground. There's work that we can do in that space. I think part of your question was, when's the next one? It'll be 12 months. We won't do anything for 12 months. This is certainly informing. It's been discussed at executive management level as far as what does it mean. We've tried to sample the comments, and we were very upfront with the staff. So people and culture have done an exceptionally good job of making sure that no one is able to be identified, which was a guarantee that I gave the staff. So I don't know who filled it in, who didn't, what the responses were. Any of the comments, and certainly at the infrastructure meeting, we spoke about it last week, or the external staff, and had a copy, is that there were comments in there, the bosses are rubbish and they don't know what they're doing. That's terrific, and expected to a degree you would get that. Which boss, what level, who, where, is it management, is it a coordinator, is it a supervisor? Those ones were a little bit, so some of the learnings out of it is how do we firm up some of those questions to not identify, but at least be able to pick up problems. The ones that we've got, and I'm just randomly rolling on the screen here in the agenda, it's on page 3 of the survey, page 20. Workload is high, multiple tasks going on at all times, easy to be sidetracked with outside issues. I don't think there's any one of us in the organisation that wouldn't relate to that, and that sort of feedback is just gold, because it's communication, it's the speed that things have to be done, resourcing could be better, gets even on that page, gets repetitive, not challenging enough at time for me, lack of communication, poor planning. Certainly the reason those comments were in there, again, we gave, for these to work, they have to be honest, and that honest feedback is what we wanted. There's no point 100% of staff turning up and saying everything's peachy and we've got rose-coloured glasses and the world's happy and we've got no issues. That's as bad as everything's rubbish and I don't like it. You can't do anything with that. Positive supervisor feedback, we dropped that one in there. Again, that was nice, but it would be nice to know where that came from. Now, there's a balance between privacy and information. Lack of communication, support, trained, experienced people above me making correct decisions or guiding what is required. Lack of training and support, being able to carry out everyday tasks, expected to know what is going on. Asked for training and support, nothing was given even after continual asking. So now that one trigs because we've maintained our training budget. The EDR process, that was one of the feedbacks earlier, and when I came here about the EDR, we fill in these things every year and we don't get anything back. So we've made changes in how the training's allocated. Now, is that they're great because they're a great discussion about, is it a supervisor issue? The supervisor's not passing the training on. Is the training, I'm going to be a bit flippant, but I want to be a brain surgeon and I'm working, filling in on the roads. That training will be refused because it's just not relevant to the job. It isn't. And we also have rules around training. So just to share with the community and councillors, if we, and some of this training is substantial cost, if we allocate training, because I would like to do a certificate X in XYZ, and I think it will help me improve my job, okay. Our agreement and contract with the employee is that it must be successfully completed. Now, if you do 1 unit or 2 units and then this is all too hard, we recover the costs. So that does tend to upset people on occasions because training is a contract between both parties. It's council is only too happy as an organisation to give it, but the commitment from the employee is that they will honour that. They're part of their end of the bargain. So that's the sort of things without taking hours today. Like notice of request compared to deadlines. Usually I needed this yesterday, now or tomorrow. Always doing the same thing, lack of communication. So there was recurrent themes in there that certainly will be pulled apart now and understood as to where it goes. And it also will feed into some of the decisions that will happen over the next 12 months.
Yeah, thank you for your insights. I absolutely agree. It's wonderful to have a high percentage of the organisation respond, and certainly good to see that balance in the comments that, yes, there are some positives, but there are also some areas. I picked up those common themes that you've talked about around communication, support, training, and a few comments around planning and better use of resources. So I guess I was looking at this survey. I think it's wonderful that we've done it, and in my previous experience, I've certainly seen the benefit of really looking at these learnings and really working to understand them and embed them. And I just recognise that, I would hate to see this survey sit on a shelf where we've ticked a box and said we've done a survey and it's all good. I think it's very important that we really look at these comments and the feedback, and particularly as you picked up the neutral, or the people have said, oh, well, not really effective, or some of those comments, because they are high percentages, and I think they need to be understood. I also think that collaboration in a regional council like ours, where we are so resource stricken, that collaboration between departments, working together, problem solving, that kind of culture that we want to create for innovation, I can see glimmers of it flicking through this survey, and I guess we just want to support you in that process. So to be honest, CEO Mark, I'd be happy to spend hours working on this subject. This is, for me, the most important part of council, is our people and their genuine beliefs, feelings and alliance with the work in which we do. And I absolutely think this has to be a core priority for council, both parts of council working together. Us as councillors actually really need to listen to some of this feedback. Taking resources up for tiny, minute issues when we're already stuck is not okay. And we as leaders need to recognise some of that as well, how we support and empower our team. So I think it's a great start, but I would like to see a report on how these things are progressing come back to council, so that we can keep a watch on it, keep talking about it, keep it in focus. The culture is everything. It's great to see 51%. I think it would be wonderful to see more people complete it next time, definitely.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's no further speakers, in wrapping up, as the portfolio holder for People and Culture, I'm happy to work, Mr. CEO, with yourself and our Manager of People and Culture, perhaps to have a closer look at some of the statements here, some of the feedback, and then perhaps we can look to bring a report back to council at some stage in the future. One of the things that we have spoken about, of course, is moving to a point through this process. This is very much a first step in a bigger process, and moving through a process whereby we would ultimately see a development plan in place for each and every one of our employees, Mr. CEO, that identifies their aspirations within council, the training and development that will be required for them to achieve those aspirations, and making sure that aligns with where their supervisor and manager sees them fitting in with that particular department. So there is a lot of work to do, and congratulate you on kick-starting the process with this, and it will certainly be continued. There is a lot of work for us to do, and we'll continue to do that and bring that back to council. I'm keen to see opportunities for our staff. I'd like to see us, as I've said before, perhaps use less consultants and use our staff more often, and provide them with opportunities to grow and develop into more challenging roles. And if that means that we have more staff who are more challenged and are given more opportunities to progress and develop, and we have an organisation where people see an opportunity for a high level of job satisfaction, a high level of opportunity to progress in terms of career path without leaving the council, I think that'll be a tremendous outcome. So a lot of work to do, but I'm sure if we all pull together and commit, we can get some great outcomes here. Mr. CEO, did you want to add anything further before we wrap up?
No, thanks, Mayor. As I said, there will be the long... actually, I'll just take a point, and a lot of organisations do this externally, so this was why I'm particularly pleased with it. We've not used any external parties with this. This has all been done through our People and Culture and the management team to develop the questions, and fair old debate about what questions and how to write them, and it's not our everyday job. We're just putting it like that. So, multi-skilling for life after local government, to go out and consult. Lol. Smiley face. But yeah, no. So it is. May I just touch, and we'll start the conversation. It would be a conversation that I want to start. We've been working towards it, and because we don't have any external assistance with this, it slows me down a little bit. But that structural, and this very much supported the structural discussion that we've been having. The school-based trainees, I just want to touch on that. So the 14, absolutely chuffed. A couple of the high schools went absolutely above and beyond. So a big shout out to the high schools across the region in supporting us and supporting this. Not all 14 will get a gig. Now, the really practical reason is if I'm doing vocational vet studies at school and I have engaged in a certificate already, I can't double up and do one in a school-based traineeship. So that's what we've got to go through. So when you see the final numbers of what we engage, it'll be part of that. And working with the schools, and this is first year, and I know I've said it several times, is if we've taken a bit slow, we've put a structure in place, it'll be really good. But yeah, there will be some, regrettably, that will drop out just because, or they'll have to make a choice between which certificate they want to do. So that work's now commencing to work with all the kids and students, put them through an interview process and give them that life experience as well. So very, very proud of that one, and she'll be a great little program once it's fully operational, and we'll have the first intake next year.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. A great example of the organisation responding to the will of council to see these school-based traineeships made a reality. And it hasn't happened without a lot of work involved in the discussions I've had with our CEO under his leadership and his manager of P&C. There's been a lot of work going behind the scenes to get us to this point. So congratulations and well done. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Rightio. 8.2 is the LGAQ 125th State Conference Outcome Report at 27. Mr. CEO.
Mayor, it's just tabled for information. So the resolutions went through, and trying to get a little bit quicker at getting all these ones up. We had the Rural Remote Council Community Sustainability Forum, the piece that we did on disability access and all area access and K2P was exceptionally well received. LGAQ has given me direct feedback there. Look to use some of that in some of their socials, and they thought we were very, very smart with the production. Regional Roads Transport Group, all of the above. All 4 of our resolutions went through with overwhelming support. So, yeah, it's tabled for information just as a follow-up to close the loop. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. It is recommended that the report be noted and received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, second to Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I certainly appreciated the opportunity to attend. I think there in the report where it says our level of government is at its most effective when we work together and speak with one voice, I think is something important for our community to realise, particularly when I was disappointed to see comments were made about particular councillors' involvement in the conference. To be honest, I thought that was quite poor form. The reality is I learned a lot from the conference and I certainly built some very strong relationships with other resource councils that are facing very similar long-term impending challenges that this council will face in terms of energy policy and eventual transition. And as you know, we've been working very much in that space. So to be able to pick the brains and the minds of others who have gone before me and meet up with some incredible people like the Mount Isa Mayor and the Mackay Mayor and really pick their brains and understand, get some advice from them was really, really helpful, particularly as somebody who's only sat in a seat for 18 months. I also just wanted to acknowledge Council's resolutions. I think those resolutions really are pertinent to our community here, and certainly it was really quite humbling to work with the Banana Shire Council Mayor, who the owner of Callide Power Station, who gratefully I was very pleased due to a technicality. I was not a nominated delegate, so I could not speak to my resolution, but I was very grateful for Mayor Ferrier and the relationship I built there and the fact that he spoke to my resolution, and at the moment in quite a interesting environment when it comes to climate and energy policy. It was great to see that resolution and that commitment that long-term planning for communities like ours is really important. So very grateful for that. My final question, I understand certainly, and certainly, you know, the ability to stand with those councils who are vulnerable to rapid and significant change to their social and economic fabrics, and really understand that work together is really important, I feel, for the South Burnett. I understand, Mayor Otto, you were unable to attend, and I guess I just want to check in terms of recouping those funds, because I know that was quite last minute. Were we able to recoup the registration and travel funds for that?
Staff were able to cancel the accommodation. We've had no costs assigned, and also the financial council is allocated to as its annual membership 2 spots, so it was one of those. So there was no direct cost.
Thank you, Mr. Say. Yeah, I can just my apologies, of course, as I did pass on. I couldn't attend the conference. Would have loved to have been there, but of course we had to go into some degree of, I suppose, urgent response back here with the COVID rollout, particularly with Mergen and Cherbourg statistics being so low. So the Premier reached out and at the Mayor's teleconference, so the response for me was to stay here and work on the ground with the community to get those COVID vaccination rates up to try and mitigate any, obviously, health and welfare issues for the people of our region when the borders do open on the 17th of December. And I think that work has paid off. We're starting to see some real good tracking in terms of the trajectory we're on with our statistics around COVID vaccinations. And on that point, I would again, at the request of the Premier, encourage everybody, all councillors, to please support the vaccination rollout through whatever platforms you have. Support our local disaster management group in terms of articulating to the community appropriate messaging that you're comfortable with. So thank you. Other speakers? Councillor Hensham.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. I'd just like to reiterate Councillor Shoemaker's expression of how much we got out of that conference, and I'm not sure what happened in the previous terms with councils and where and when they attended, but I honestly believe that's probably one of the most beneficial things that I've been to as a councillor and as a new councillor, and as Councillor Shoemaker alluded to be able to talk to the other mayors and councillors in those divisions, and I think from memory 77 other councillors were represented there, to sit in a conference room with those other councillors and have 108 motions to go through was fairly daunting, but I can tell you I enjoyed every one of those, and there were some very, very interesting motions moved forward. Some were defeated to some surprise, and some were passed unanimously. So in that, and there was a lot of rural things, and it was very beneficial to me being rural, and those people up there have a lot of the same issues that we have down here with small rate bases, huge areas, major roads. They deal in an environment where they are going into a wet season, where they sit now for some 3 to 6 months with not the ability to do what they wish to do in their shires. So it was hugely beneficial to me, and I'd like to think that every councillor has the opportunity to attend one of these functions every year, because there is so much to get out of it. I, like Councillor Shoemaker, copped a little bit of flack about going there, but when explaining to them exactly what goes on up there, I think as a council and just one of the 77 there, we came back, and to see 4 of our motions put forward and accepted and moved unanimously, that was pretty good when you sit there and see that in amongst hundreds and hundreds of people and delegates. There's 2 delegates from each council allowed to vote on that, and it was a very learning experience. I'm sure Kurt's can agree with me. We sat there in awe at a lot of things, not just with on that Wednesday, but the Monday and Tuesday were seriously beneficial, and I seriously look forward to being able to, or given the opportunity to attend future LGAQ meetings. It was that beneficial. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Other speakers? No? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all.
Mr Mayor, can I move a resolution from the floor in regards to LGAQ conferences in the future? In the past, this council has elected to send 2 members each year and pick out 2 members. I'd like to move that a resolution be formed that all councillors be available to go at their own discretion. If they are available to attend any LGAQ conferences in the future, they should be allowed to go. And so I'm looking for wording here maybe to help me along the lines here. Like, it should be, I want to see all councillors available, or offered the opportunity to go to all LGAQ conferences until the end of this term at least. So, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. It's probably caught us off guard a bit there in terms of a motion off the floor. Could I suggest that perhaps we get a report brought back from our exec finance and corporate team to a future standing committee in relation to what perhaps the benefits with that would be and what the cost would be, and then we can consider that at a future standing committee meeting. General Manager, happy if we take that on board? Oh, Mr. CEO, sorry, that's yours. I'm looking at Susan in terms of finance and the cost, but which is one thing about Mr. CEO.
Thanks, Mayor. Recall the one from 28th of April, we do and Councillor's right, Council's previous policy has been a rotational basis between ALGA, LGAQ. Bush conferences snuck in there as far as being extremely valuable. I haven't been to a LGAQ Bush conference, but councillor feedback from across the state has been that the Bush conference is an exceptionally one. We do the annual report, it's not the annual report, but a report to council now each year, and the 28th of April one was that picked out those who are able to attend. We're automatically entitled as part of our membership, as I stated before, 2 delegates. So, and certainly one of the learnings for myself out of this LGAQ, and I think whichever councillor referenced it, LGAQ tightened up the speaking rules this year. Traditionally, where a councillor had information, if you don't mind me just branching out a little bit, Mayor, LGAQ has always had the opportunity, if a councillor had a specific knowledge, they would allow them to speak from the floor, whilst the voting delegate was carried by whoever the registered delegate was. So certainly into the future report, we would be putting up who the delegate would be by resolution. So whether we want 2 votes with 1 person or share the vote between the between 2 councillors, because they would not allow any person to speak this year and across any council unless they were carrying the voting card. So that's probably the first time I've seen them go that tight on that rule. But yeah, I mean either or. So we do a report each year, or we will do a report each year. Now there is nothing. There is a professional development allocation to councillors, and the only thing is that if that gets out of budget, we would need to have a look at that. But at the moment, and with the participation this year, and with ALGA and the Bush conference, the ones from the resolution of April, everything was within budget. So happy to go with whether you want to take the motion or continue to produce the annual report to council to pick delegates.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO. When you would expect that report would come forward?
Again, April, February, March, April, because you're looking, when the conferences are at that point in time, where they're going to be. So we've got ALGA, the 3 stock standards are ALGA, Bush Conference and LGAQ State, as per that resolution. So it would be in that first quarter early in the new year. It wouldn't be before February because we just don't necessarily know the venues or dates.
Would it be possible to have consideration given in that to options to involve all councillors in accordance with Councillor Jones' proposed motion?
Yeah, it would certainly be. Yeah.
So if we could do that, would you be happy with that, Councillor Jones, if we have a report brought forward? Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, Mr. CEO.
So, Mayor, if we target it as part of the report of the April Standing Committee, and then we'll lock it in for April.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, 8.3, changes to Queensland Government defamation case law and the use of social media. That's at page 30. Mr. CEO, is this one yours? Or Manager Carroll?
I would commend the report if everyone's read it, or if they haven't read it through fully. It's tremendous information in there on where the world's going. When I read it, I thought, yeah. And there's been some other movements in this space, but anyway, other than, there's some exceptionally useful information in there.
Thanks, Mr. CEO. So it's recommended that the committee receives a report for information. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Shoemaker, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I'd certainly like to thank Manager Carolyn for the report. I found it exceptionally interesting. Particularly, I've just studied, as I was saying, media law and ethics, and it's incredible how much change is actually here within this report. I just wanted to, I guess, because I'm mindful it's an extensive report, really like Manager Carolyn, if she's comfortable, to speak to it a little bit and give us a little advice in relation to this report in the context of our roles. Certainly, I think it is relevant, and it's something that all leaders across all areas, non-for-profit and profit sector, need to really understand, and particularly when I think what I've seen in the past 18 months is the bullying that happens on social media is really running quite rife. I do feel there are people out there tearing down our community instead of building it back up, and social media has given them a platform to do that. And whilst I understand that serious harm is clearly a difficult thing to quantify if you read this report, and what is in the best interest of the public, I am mindful from a personal and professional point of view how damaging some of the comments people make, defamatory comments that are made on social media really are to individuals and to our community, and how much mistrust it breeds, and certainly how much misunderstanding, and it does erode the reputation, I think, for our council, for those elected representatives, and for the people, the 300 odd people who I'm very proud to say work here every day. I think it's certainly been challenging for me because a lot of the behaviour I've witnessed on social media of this nature is against my core values, and I recognise it comes at a cost. It breeds dysfunction, and in the absence of strong leadership, it's allowed to continue. Certainly believe we have significant challenges to work to really raise the bar here and stop wasting time and energy on negativity and start to really work together rather than responding to idiotic statements. And I know I've had a few on my own page that I've removed or made the decision to ban specific users. So I see the work you've put into this, Manager Carolyn, and how topical the issue is, particularly in a local context, being the closest government to the people, and would just really appreciate your insights with regards to this report.
So thank you, Councillor, and through the Mayor. Just in relation to whatever I convey to the group at this point in time, it's not considered legal advice and can't be relied upon in a court of law. However, it is for information and general topical discussion, and on a case-by-case basis, we would drill down further and provide a suitable response for specific examples that you might come across. But as a general concept, certainly the legislation has changed, and the 3 articles take you through the journey of what the changes have been. And then the last article, and I'd like to acknowledge all the authors as I've just literally transpired their content across to this report, because it does indicate they're qualified lawyers in that space and have had their articles vetted, no doubt, by their peers. And so it does provide you some real critical information as to how you can possibly navigate through this space. But certainly from a social media point of view, there's yet to be a definition of serious harm. However, there is some indication in the last article about what you can reasonably or what you could reference as a litmus test as to what could be considered serious harm. However, it hasn't been defined in case law as yet, so that definition is yet to be firmed up. In terms of your page, so in a practical sense, you have a social media page. It is generally recommended as an industry practice that you have rules of engagement. So there's rules of engagement in relation to your page as to what you will accept and what you won't accept, and you set the expectations, which then allows you to monitor and manage the comments in relation to your page. Things like often you see quite generalised terms like be kind. Anything that would be considered defamatory within the context of this page will be removed, and at the outset it allows people who are engaging on your page to have a full understanding as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. In each situation, it is generally recommended that you do a risk assessment. So the risk of removing that comment or the risk of blocking someone, should that action be taken, it should be documented as to why that decision was made, the context of that decision, and so you're covering yourselves from the point of view of having any scrutiny around how you manage your page. And certainly, executive services manage the social media profiles for council and would have access to some resources and information that may assist you in managing your own pages, and then can help you with that context, I would suggest, through the CEO. Does that answer to some degree?
Carol, and the other one is clearly sorry, Councillor, but in all the cases that I've seen that have gone through clearly delineate between your personal and your councillor page. So if you're carrying a councillor page, your personal page, and when you overlap between the two, the ones that get mucky is if anything's being posted that could be prescribed as a councillor, but it starts in, people start to, and you see it, people get tagged and get comfortable, probably is the best word, that blurring of the line between the official council page, the councillor page and the personal page, and not talking about any specific example, but the ones that go through, that's where it gets really messy.
Okay, you comfortable with the response, Councillor Schumacher?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for the report.
Yes, thank you, Manager. Okay, so if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, we'll move on to 8.4. Notice to repeal South Bennett Regional Council resolutions. Minutes number 584 and 4291 can be found at page 36. Who's got this one? Manager Carolyn, thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, these two policies we've circulated, and we've found that they're actually redundant now. They're not specific to any organisation. That's the South Bennett Tourism Advisory Committee terms of reference, and the second one is South Bennett Disposal of Council Real Estate Policy. The disposal of real estate has been incorporated in our disposal of assets policy, hence the other one as well. So these now are redundant. We're trying to merge a few of these policies that relate to each other, so we don't have so many policies there. That's basically all that is, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. Okay, so we have it's recommended that in accordance with section 262 of the Local Government Regulation 2012, the following resolutions be repealed. And this is a committee recommendation to council, sorry, so this will need to go to the ordinary meeting. But the recommendation is that item 5.2.2 of the general meeting held on the 12th of June 2019, South Bennett Regional Council, South Bennett Tourism Advisory Committee Terms of Reference, Strategic 029, minute number 584, and item 10.2.6 of the general meeting held on 23 February 2011, South Bennett Regional Council, Disposal of Council Real Estate Policy, minute number 4291. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Second to Councillor Duff. Speakers? Okay, let's put this to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.5, adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council Magpie Behaviour Management Policy can be found at 50. Okay, thank you, General Manager O'May.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. So this policy was established following Council's decision earlier in the year to engage a magpie or bird relocator, which we carried out about probably six weeks ago. We had the locator in town. We had a report to the last standing committee on the success of that program. So really just putting a policy around relocation of magpies, just identifying that in the first instance we will put the signage up, identifying those territory areas where they're likely to encounter a magpie, steps in there about how to prevent injuries from a swooping magpie. So certainly manager of governance might have some insight knowledge in this with the cable ties and everything. But yeah, just a list of that. And we just put sorry, Carolyn, we certainly put a paragraph in there about the removal of engaging a bird relocator. Yeah, just looking at, council won't respond to individual cases. The process basically is that we will collate a list of reports, and we're really looking at those birds that are the danger, causing injury and harm. And so, yeah, just stipulating that we won't necessarily provide a timeframe for removal. We'll collate that because as the bird relocators come from out of town, so and the time taken, it just for efficiency, it is better if they can come up and try to get multiple birds at once. And it can be, I think, when they were up here, can be a couple of minutes to capture one bird. Some birds are just unable to be captured for various reasons. So and obviously linked to we've got in there to the budget. So when council's looking at a budget allocation for this, that just highlighting that we're not going to respond to each individual case. So I think the policy was circulated around. So
Thank you, General Manager. So we have a recommendation that the committee recommends to council that the South Bennett Regional Council Magpie Behaviour Management Policy, Statutory 061, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
I certainly think it's wonderful, Manager Carolyn, role models the right behaviour with your zippy ties on your helmet. I certainly see the challenges in setting a policy like this. It's difficult, it's an emotive subject, and everyone has differing views as to what's the right thing by the magpie, what's the right thing in terms of community safety. But having a look at the policy and having a look at other councils' policies, I do think this is a responsible policy and it's in line with the intent of council's recent program. I certainly can see how it aligns with the statutory permit system with DES, with Department of Environmental Sciences, which I think is really important. And I guess, I just wanted to throw my support behind the team. I can understand how challenging it would be to develop something like this, but I think it's a great starting point. So thank you for your efforts in this regard.
Further speakers? Councillor Duff, any response before we wrap up?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm happy with the policy. I think that for practicalities and for resourcing, it's suitable that we actually wait until we've got a number of birds rather than just do it on a case by case. That would be too costly. And I think the community will be happy with this policy, and I'm very happy to endorse it. And thank you for the work that's been behind the scenes in putting together a policy, which would be very difficult to get it right. But I think I'm very happy with it, actually. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Those in favour? All in favour? Yep. Those against? Okay. So we have in favour, Linnell, Councillor Duff, Councillor Potter, Councillor in favour, Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Otto, against Councillor Jones, Councillor Henshin and Councillor Froloff. Got that? So the recommendation, so the motion has been carried 4 votes to 3. Thank you all. Yes. Then it was 4, yes. Thank you, Linnell. Okay, moving on now to 8.6, which is adoption of the South Bennett Regional Council related party disclosure policy, and that is at page 55 of the agenda. And okay, General Manager, thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, this policy, the only amendment or adjustment to this policy has been the description of the council representatives. So there's been no other change here. It remains constant, and it just ensures that we capture all of the related parties and anything that may influence the council's decision. And that's so this policy was developed by the department and adopted in its entirety by this council. So that's the only changes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, General Manager. Okay, it's recommended that the committee recommends to council that the South Bennett Regional Council related party disclosure policy, statutory 057, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Froloff, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Potter, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Shoemaker.
I just had a question in terms of that definition. It says that a council representative is a person employed by council who performs work under the direction and control of council on an ongoing basis with ongoing expectation of work entitled to superannuation contributions paid by council. I just wanted to understand, so in some instances we have major projects or activities where you might employ a project manager, or you might put a contractor into a role to support the organisation. but you may not pay them super because they're not actually on our books as such. Their entity would be contracting to council. So I just wanted to understand, do they have the same level of related party disclosures if you've got, is there a threshold or something? Because, you know, I understand if it's ad hoc, if it's only a once off or something, but if it's actually like an ongoing arrangement, and we do have organisations that do that kind of work for us, are they considered a council representative or not?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. My understanding, councillor, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, any major projects that we employ contractors, and I'll give you an example of the KTP project, we actually do a risk assessment and we have full disclosure of the principal contractor. They fill in a declaration there of interest to let us know, yes, if they're related to any council employee, any councillor, that's the process of engagement with those external contractors, especially if they're, I don't even think that there's a limit to that. And like I said, I stand corrected by the CEO. If you can offer, Caroline. That's correct, yes. Yes, no, but we do, that's part of our risk assessment, councillor, and it does fall under this policy there as well, yeah. It's high risk to the organisation, anything like that.
Thank you. Yes, that was the reason for my questioning. So, no, it's good to understand that process is in place. Thank you for clarifying.
Sorry, and it is added to our register of interests as well, that Manager Caroline manages.
Thank you, General Manager. Any further speakers? If not, to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.7, adoption of the Southbound Regional Council Heritage Collection Policy at page 61. General Manager and Manager, thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's the CEO's policy there, thank you.
Sorry, Mr CEO. It is indeed.
Yeah, passing the heritage over. Used to it. Yeah, no, thanks, Mayor. Just really by what's presented in the report, the communications is one. So exec was asked to do a markup. It was circulated. We got some feedback from the manager of property, which was very helpful. Fundamental changes. I think from memory, this one's got a fair bit of age to it, and it was an opportunity to have a good look at it and bring it up to spec. Long story short, there was actually it was an interesting little exercise about. You'll see there's a strikeout about there was a fair old discussion about an acquisition committee. That was probably more internal than any response we've got from outside parties. We've taken it out in this instance, not because we don't want to, but it's probably we don't have a paid curator or whichever the term is on staff. We have a lot of this is done by volunteers. It's something probably flagging it. It is we're extremely interested into down the track because we have a substantial collection across all council-owned assets. And so for anyone who saw the Monument Men yesterday, we were the Monument People with Councillor Potter, Rosie and myself tracking down artwork. So this is a small step into modernising a couple of these bits because our collection is quite substantive and it's quite valuable, even if not in dollars, but it's historic intent. So happy to take questions, but other than that, the main gist was to get this thing up to standard because it was a 2009 policy.
Thank you, Mr CEO. It's recommended that the committee recommends to Council that the Southbound Regional Council Heritage Collection Policy, Strategic 003, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Secondly, Councillor Henshin. Councillor Potter, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I believe this is a great policy, and gone are the days where council will accept anything and everything that is offered to them with relation to the museums. And I do trust that I do know that we have some amazing volunteers working at our museums, and I must thank them all now because the work they do There's no way we as a council could actually pay for that work. We'd be broke within a day, I think, for the amount of work that they do for us. But I think giving some of that responsibility to the staff, because the staff in each of these museums know exactly what the museum is about. And I think that's a really good idea if we use the staff and the staff's knowledge of what those museums need and want in connection with our properties team as well. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. Further speakers? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.8 is fuel tax credit methodology update at page 68. Thank you, General Manager.
Sorry, thank you. Again, through you, Mr Mayor, thank you. This was a request directly from you, Mr Mayor, to review our fuel tax credit methodology. So we have, in this instance, employed a contractor as per the last review that was done. However, there is a point of difference with this contractor, is that they have done a review on, and I'll give you the dates in a moment, but they have now, the point of difference is that they are leaving us with that methodology. They're training the staff. We have the staff with the expertise now to interpret that methodology, and they're also leaving us with the templates. So going forward, we can do this internally. So thank you. We appreciate that. And like you're saying, we do have staff who are very talented and can move forward. So I'm not going to actually give you the how much or a dollar value, because we're actually verifying that at the moment. My staff, Kerry, is verifying the methodology with a view to claiming this back on our BAS. They've just finished the 2021 year with a potential claim there that is quite substantial. But like I said, again, in Council's favour, again, Kerry will be finding or verifying that claim, and they've just finished reviewing the 2018 to the 2019 year, and they've just finished the 2019 to 2020. Again, we're reviewing those figures before moving forward and claiming that. So it's a really positive outcome, and I thank you, Mr Mayor, for requesting that review.
Thank you very, very much for that overview, General Manager. And can I say, first of all, wonderful to hear that we've got the templates now from the consultant. We've got the staff trained, so we'll be able to do all this ourselves internally. And it's been an opportunity for us to train and develop our staff. So new areas of learning for them, new development opportunity for them. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much. That's great news. And great to hear that the 3 years have now been reviewed, and it's with you guys to now run your eye over, confirm, and then no doubt you'll report back to the next standing committee with some figures that we can run our eyes over. So all in all, a great job. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. And we will bring the actual figures back, but I'd just like to have them verified first, and then more than happy to share them with Council. It's quite, I think, exciting news.
Absolutely, yeah, completely support that as a proper process. Thank you, General Manager. Okay, so we have the recommendation that the update on the fuel tax credit review be noted and received for information. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Jones, second to Councillor Potter. Speakers, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm really pleased to hear that we are actually training our staff, because my question was why were we engaging a consultant? I was hoping that we had qualified accountants and that we would be able to do that without having to engage a consultant. I just was interested to know and worried, concerned that perhaps the cost of the consultant might have been more than we actually were able to claim, but I can see by the smile on your face that that's not the case. But I'm just wanted to, just the question was, and I guess that might be a question on notice, is what it's cost for the consultant to do, I see the cost to do this year and then the review of the previous years, what's that cost? And also, you've already answered my second question. You are going to train the staff going forward so that we won't have to employ consultants into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, Councillor, and the point being, we weren't privy to the methodology used, so that's why we had to employ the consultant on that basis that we were given the methodology, because what we've been claiming has been in line with the taxation department's guidelines, but as part of the plant and fleet review as well, we're going to get more cleansed data and that as far as fuel credits and that flowing through. So it's an accurate assessment there, because before it was about how long they sat on the side of the road or how long they used that plant and all that. So there was a lot of variables there. But like I said, now we do have that, and the prior consultants, it's their business, obviously. They did the methodology and just went, whereas these consultants we have engaged, that was part of the scope, that they left that with us, the model. So then our staff then could be trained and we could have more of an accurate, when we claim them, moving forward.
Thanks very much, Chair Manager. We look forward to a report coming to the next Standing Committee meeting on the outcome of all that work. And as I said, great to see that we're using that as an opportunity to train and develop our staff. And no doubt we're going to be all over it into the future. So well done. Thanks again. Okay, if there's no further speakers, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.1, it's now my pleasure to invite Councillor Shoemaker to present the Regional Development Portfolio Report at page 69. Thank you, Councillor.
Council recently completed a land use assessment for 1 Pound Street, Kingaroy, and as part of the analysis tabled at last week's Community Standing Committee meeting, I'd like to share some of the key economic trends and learnings from that report. Point 1, growing ageing population. In the past decade, the average age in the South Burnett has increased by 3.1 years. Persons over 60 years and above currently account for 31.2% of the population in our local government area. This is projected to increase to 37.1% by 2041. Healthcare and social assistance is the main employment industry in Kingaroy, representing 21.2% of the total employment in 2020. This industry increased by 2.4% as a proportion of the total employment when compared to 2016. Other major employment industries include retail, trade and manufacturing. However, these industries have declined since 2016 as a proportion of the total employment for the region. Kingaroy is the major regional centre of the South Burnett, housing 33% of the region's population. And since 2014, Kingaroy has observed a declining population. While I acknowledge there may be some changes in this data as it's drawn from the 2016 Australian Bureau of Statistics and the 2021 census data is not expected to be available until 2022, I think these reflections are important to keep in mind as we map the future of the South Burnett. Clearly, the key drivers for growth are population and demographic profile, and these interrelated factors change over time. Councillor Potter and I learned more about the Queensland rental market challenges regions like ours are currently facing at the recent Housing and Homelessness Forum in Bundaberg. Rental prices are increasing faster than income growth. 40% of private market renters are paying over 30% of their household income on rent. Low vacancy rates of less than 1% exist in most local government areas. The National Rental Affordability Scheme ceases in 2024, that's a federal scheme, and growing population and interstate migration, I guess, continues to put pressure on existing housing challenges. In summary, housing supply is not keeping up with population growth. There is overwhelming evidence in Australia that suggests this housing affordability crisis is only going to get worse. The number of households unable to access accommodation at market set levels or those requiring some form of housing assistance is on the rise. Without immediate intervention, this crisis is expected to span years and impact heavily on industry advancement and community wellbeing. The forum and these findings serve as an important reminder of the relevance and priority of the work that we are and can do in relation to our planning scheme amendments, streamlining of planning processes with the economic support instrument and the development incentive scheme. Furthermore, there are other significant conversations happening across the state and federal levels of government with regards to manufacturing, net zero emissions targets, inland rail, and water security, to name a few. These long-standing priorities require dedicated attention, and as we learned at the LGAQ conference and in conversations with other councils, we must all do our part and do so quickly. I believe to progress these conversations in the South Burnett, we need boots on the ground in regional development, and that our approach and investment must be targeted and outcomes focused. I've been investigating other models for how councils support and deliver targeted regional development outcomes and work with elected representatives to overcome the most strategic challenges their regions face, while positioning the organisation to maximise funding and the region to deliver on growth opportunities. While I recognise the benefits of this kind of investment in resources takes time to deliver a return, I have discovered the Gladstone Regional Council model has been successful in starting a conversation, building relationships and momentum that has been a catalyst for economic transformation in their region. Gladstone Regional Council have promoted regional development through initiatives that support knowledge-intensive modern manufacturing, collaborated with relevant stakeholders to prepare the Gladstone Region Hydrogen Industry Development Strategy to guide the establishment and growth of their region's hydrogen ecosystem, an ecosystem that has not existed before. They've also promoted Gladstone as a manufacturing hub to help existing and prospective local manufacturers develop their skills and expertise in modern manufacturing. In my view, these are game-changing initiatives, and Gladstone Regional Council has demonstrated what is possible when each player actively contributes their specific knowledge and expertise in a way that creates real value in thinking differently, testing new ideas, and then building on the solutions that make these things happen. We have some incredible thought leaders in our region and working in our council who have done just this. And through the Regional Development Advisory Committee, and by bringing stakeholders to the table, I do believe we too can achieve these things. However, that will require resources beyond my capabilities. And those resources will require council's support and investment. If we as a council are to deliver on the regional development strategy, to progress the action plan and to maximise the growth opportunities before this region right now, we need boots on the ground. With this in mind, I would like to propose a council delegation, including councillors and executive leaders, take Mayor Matt Burnett up on his kind offer to show us firsthand how the Strategy and Economic Transformation team works with Gladstone Regional Development Advisory Group and their council to deliver meaningful regional development outcomes in their region. As we've discussed many times in this chamber, our region is on the cusp of significant change. We must lean in and work together if we are really to drive the South Burnett forward. And in my capacity as Regional Development Portfolio Holder, I need dedicated strategic resources to deliver for my region and my community. Certainly before closing, I'd just like to acknowledge Josh and Joe Jadiski from Plenty Foods. It certainly was wonderful to be present for their food manufacturing hub, and certainly recognise my fellow colleagues who were able to be there. Certainly the opportunity for them to maximise and value add to existing agricultural opportunities is really exciting, and I just think that $22 million expansion, being Australia's first defatted nut flour production facility, which will begin construction early next year, is just gives you goosebumps really to think about what our region could be. However, I also recognise the dedicated resources that Council had provided in originally planning out that piece of land, and certainly recognise the planning team and the former economic development officers who worked on that with Josh and his team to enable him some freedom to have that land for a particular period of time and to map out a project like that. That's really exciting, and certainly want to acknowledge that work. I think there are many more opportunities for this region, but without dedicated resources, they're just not going to happen. They're going to pass us by. Thank you. I'd like to move my report be accepted. And I certainly will be going to Gladstone, so you're welcome to join me please let me know.
Thank you, councillor. We have a seconder, councillor Henson. Thank you. Speakers, councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Shoemaker, I just wanted to know, when you talk about boots on the ground, I believe we should be putting more energy into supporting industry driving job creation. For example, rather than employing more staff that you're talking about, are we considering doing what is working in tourism using the VSB model, supporting industry driving industry? So that's just my question. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Duff, and I certainly believe we are doing that. Partnering with organisations like CCIQ and certainly the Chamber of Commerce, I think industry is supporting industry, and they are having some rich conversations. And as I've tabled in this chamber before, a really clear strategy in how their charter and how they work together, certainly across governments, with some big ideas. So I do believe council is supporting industry. What I'm talking about are certainly probably different resources to what's traditionally been had here in our council before. I'm talking about dedicated support, that bigger picture thinking, the kinds of things like the Protogo project, where you begin a conversation about a piece of land some years ago, and it takes a number of years before you actually get a result because of those conversations. I'm talking about things like what Matt Burnett has done in Gladstone, where he's brought together, with the support of his strategy and economic transformation team, brought together key players from across the energy industry, mining, certainly universities and alike, and really focused on a shared action plan and collaborating. And I guess what I'm struggling with is I'm doing a lot of the work and a lot of the research myself in between being a councillor, and it's just not working. So I really do think to get the things that we need happening in our pipeline, we need resources. We need somebody thinking big. For Mayor Matt Burnett, he has a resource which he was kind enough to share how it works. That resource goes to every meeting for him, represents him if he is unavailable, and they work together in a very targeted way. And things like hydrogen wouldn't, and that conversation that's happening in Gladstone, that momental conversation wouldn't happen without those kind of resources. So I think driving industry is very important. I think you'll find that that's already happening in many ways. And I think what I would like to see is council playing a more strategic role in terms of planning out the future of our region. And in meeting with State Development yesterday, they're certainly going to help us with an investment prospectus and some other projects, certainly help us we're planning out the meeting with our Regional Development Committee early in the new year to really plan out that action plan further to the strategy. But we need resources to really drive, if you really want to drive this region forward, like other regions are doing so. Maryborough has just had some giant announcements. Fraser Coast has had some giant announcements. We just don't have that kind of support and those resources. So I guess it's up to our council to decide whether we continue our focus on infrastructure, if we really want to take this growth opportunity, start thinking big and start having bigger conversations. Councillor Duff.
Are you comfortable with that, councillor Duff?
No, Mr Mayor, because I believe we should be putting our energy into making our planning department easier to get things through, more customer focused, helping industry rather than hindering industry. I had Plenty Foods has done all the work, some 100 jobs on the back of a federal grant and personal investment. And I've been told that company had all sorts of frustrations with council in getting their shed finalised. They had equipment stored while waiting some 12 months for council. So I think our focus needs to be in that planning section so that we can get out of the way of industry, cut the red tape, and have a can-do council so that when they go to the planning department, instead of having the feedback that we make it all too hard, that we actually make it easy and facilitate industry driving industry. So that's where I believe our focus should be. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Certainly a bigger conversation to be had here. I just want to give Councillor Jones the opportunity if I could. Thank you. Councillor
Thanks,
Jones.
Mr Mayor. I fully support the councillor going back to the start of this term when we had an economic development section and we no longer have it. If you wanted to go back and have a look at the videos, I was a councillor that said we needed to have an economic development or an economic officer that was a contact to support our councillor. And I will give the councillor credit that has this portfolio. She has been working her butt off and really trying to get some traction on the ground and all that sort of stuff. But I really do believe, and talking to a lot of other councils, I don't know that there's too many others across Queensland out of 77 councils that does not have an economic officer contact or something like that to support our councillor that has a portfolio. With your comments, Councillor Duff, in regards to planning and all that sort of stuff, fully agree. But I believe, Mr CEO, a question to you, you might be able to make some bit more clarity here. The planning scheme is under review, and I believe that we have a restructure underway that may address these issues that we have. But I fully support and always have said that this council needs a contact for economic development or regional development and all that sort of stuff. I do believe that this council, not just the councillor, but this council needs to have a contact other than the portfolio holder to work alongside, because I've spoken to a lot of councils and a lot of the people and a lot of the councillors acknowledge the fact that they all have a contact for economic development, regional development. We haven't got one, and we haven't had one for nearly 18 months. So I think this is an important discussion, like Mr Mayor has acknowledged. This is a bigger discussion, and we do need to look at this coming into our quarterly reviews and budgetary discussions into the following year. So I fully support what the council is saying, and I've always said that this council needs and deserves an economic or regional development contact officer. Thank you.
CEO, did you want to make any comment in relation to organisational restructuring?
Yep, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it's a big discussion, certainly, and actually I would go back to, I probably respectfully disagree a little bit with Councillor Duff. For all the issues that we may have had in tourism and different things at different point in time, Craig Tunley and Christy Broad spent an extensive amount of time with Protoco, as it then was. It was a whole of organisation approach, because we've got everything from grease trap problems in the old butter factory through to, it was actually quite a novel solution with a lease purchase, and that development wouldn't have gone ahead without that land purchase, and it was just that simple. Council supported it fully. We had the support of the council at the time. It was a little bit of a different, the planning issues is probably a different department, different section, but certainly organisationally, it's something that we recognised, the resourcing, the planning review, building a shed. There is this funny thing called the scheme that we sometimes don't agree with. There was one recently that I think I've mentioned it to you before, thought was a terrible outcome, but it was totally legal. So it's a myriad of challenges in that space that we have to navigate through, and certainly continuing to look at opportunities to improve engagement with community and certainly get that feedback as quickly as possible so that they're told front up. I'll give you an example. I had some people come through the office the other day and we had a conversation, and the answer was a blunt no, because they just couldn't do it. And they were very appreciative of the fact that it was a half-hour meeting. They drove up from the coast, and the answer is just no. There was no legal way that we could do what they wanted to do. I won't go into details. Well, no, actually that's badly put. There wasn't the opportunity or the ability to do what they wanted to do. And so if we can have that front-end advice to people and say, look, this isn't going to happen because X, Y, Z, that pre-lodgement, certainly that we can continue to improve in that space as far as getting that clear and concise message out to developers or interested parties. Yep, can work with you. We can navigate through the system like this, or unfortunately the scheme doesn't allow it, and it would be a bigger issue of changing the scheme. So the input into the regional plan is equally, and I know the Mayor has been attending those meetings as well, or definitely been attending those meetings. The regional plan holds a very valuable space here too. Probably long-winded, Mayor, but yeah.
Thanks, Mr CEO. And of course, the CEO and I have been working in terms of corporate governance and people and culture. We understand that the corporate plan's resolved and we've had a fairly busy few months, but we will be progressing to the restructuring, through the restructuring process, identifying with council what the appropriate structure does need to be moving forward to make sure it aligns with our corporate plan. And that may mean that we do have to look at how we can realign certain parts of the structure to make sure that it is going to be giving us the best chance to deliver on that. So I'll come to Councillor Shoemaker shortly to write a reply so we can wrap this up. But just one thing I'd like to observe, and that is just in relation to certainly the housing crisis, something that's happening across regional Queensland, a real issue. And I just want to acknowledge the Palaszczuk government, in excess of $2 billion they are investing in housing across Queensland. And CEO Mark and I have met with Minister Enoch. We had a teleconference with Minister Enoch. I've met with Minister Enoch in Parliament. She is very keen to come and visit our region. She made a great announcement in Toowoomba last week in terms of housing for the Toowoomba region, and I know she's very keen to work with our council on housing solutions for our region and give us every opportunity through the proper due process to access a reasonable fair share of that in excess of $2 billion fund. And I'd like to acknowledge Mr CEO for the work that you're doing with Minister Enoch's departmental officers in progressing that work. So thank you very much. So there is work happening in this space. Councillor Henson, before we go to Councillor Shoemaker to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. And I must say, thank you for the invitation with Mayor Burnett one early morning down in Wandai, and I'm sure as Councillor Jones would agree, it was a seriously beneficial meeting and a very enjoyable meeting. In relation to the invitation to the Gladstone region and their development advisory group, I really believe, having spent some time in Gladstone myself, not to get caught up in the billion-dollar enterprise and industry that Gladstone has up in there, but if we can go there and come back with a vapour of something off their advisory committee, I think it's seriously beneficial to this region, because I'm sure we will, and I look forward to that invitation when that comes along, Kirsty. So, Councillor Shoemaker, congratulations, and I know that you're under the pump and it's a tough gig, and when people ask us, as Councillor Jones alluded to, our Economic Development Officer, you're it, and it's a tough gig. And as Mayor Burnett shook his head in disbelief that we don't have one is testament to the amount of work that you do in that space. So, yeah, a very interesting meeting with Mayor Burnett, and look forward to that. And I think we certainly as a council could come back with something very beneficial to this region. Thank you.
Okay, right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, and certainly acknowledge your meetings with the Minister, Mayor Otto. It's been wonderful talking with South Burnett CTC and other not-for-profit agencies about how we may be able to leverage some funding for affordable and social housing here in the South Burnett. So there is some significant parcel of work, and I'd certainly like to acknowledge GM O'May and his property team for their support with that. I would like to just, in wrapping up, Councillor Duff, in reference to some of your comments, to be completely honest, there are about 4 exciting projects currently in the pipeline, which take dedicated resources and time to meet with those people, to understand their needs, to connect them with the stakeholders that are relevant, to connect them with the funding bodies that are relevant, and to actually shape up their ideas into projects which will deliver significant growth opportunities for our region. And I've been working in that space quietly behind the scene, because that's how things like this happen. I would just like to acknowledge on Friday afternoon, General Manager O'May and I, sorry Mr Mayor, you were unavailable, met with a local developer who actually gave kudos to Council for the Development Incentive Scheme, and enormous kudos to Council for the changes he's experienced in working with our planning team and department. And I'd certainly like to acknowledge them for the work they've been doing in that space. It's been exceptional. And to hear that developer say that there are infill developments happening here in Kingaroy right now, and other very exciting developments in the wings, and that is because Council's policy and because of our change in direction with planning procedures, was really exceptional. If anything, he's encouraged Council to extend that incentives program. He's seen projects that he never would have got off the ground that are actually happening, and they are providing bricks and mortar and places for which people are living. So that's exciting. So I disagree with many of the things you've stated, Councillor Duff. I think you're taking a short view. And in my opinion, when it comes to economic growth and the long-term sustainability and future of our region, that requires a long-term view and it requires a strategic, very strategic approach. Thank you.
Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.2 is the Regional Development Tourism Monthly Update at 71. Okay. We have it there as presented. The recommendation is that it be received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder Councillor Potter. Any speakers? Councillor Shoemaker, thank you.
Just want to acknowledge the report here. The team who support our visitor information centres have put it together. It's exceptional to see for the month of October how much work really has happened across our visitor information centres and our museums. Really exceptional to see conversations have continued around the Blackbutt Information Centre and have been held with the Roy Emerson Museum. Also great to hear that we've had a bus tour of visitors come from Bribie Island to experience the Energy Centre in Nanango. We've acquired 3 new volunteers. Thank you to Denise Bainbridge, Robin Bloomfield and Vern Nord, who have all signed up to volunteer at our centres. That's exceptional. We've had children from the primary school visit the Mergen Vic, the St Joseph's Primary School. We've had volunteers, and I think this is such an important, and I certainly know, unfortunately I was unwell, but Councillor Froloff and Councillor Henshin joined the volunteers on their last FMIL. And it's great to read that they've gone to Red Rocket Buoy, Milana Gardens, and then on to Cumbia, through Inverlour, Iron Pot to reach Passchendaele Farm holidays and finish up at Chrissy Trees for You. I just think in spending some time in those centres, really upskilling those volunteers so they can sell and market our region, experience that for themselves is wonderful. It's also a wonderful thing to acknowledge what they do and give them a day out to really experience the region for themselves. So I'd like to acknowledge the team. I know how much work goes into coordinating those things. And of course, we've had the visit from the Museum Development Officer and 2 colleagues from the Cobb & Co Museum who've really acknowledged the setup of the Kingaroy Museum, which I think is exceptional. I think often we don't necessarily recognise what we have, so to have those fresh eyes come in and say things were exceptional is really great. So certainly just like to acknowledge the work that's gone in at our visitor information centres. There's also quite a bit of information there around other activities. I only had one question for you, CEO Mark, just in relation to on page 74, there's a report about the South Burnett Today Tourism Guide, and I see we have advertised council's facilities, which is wonderful. I just wondered if the rail trail and mountain bike trails will be acknowledged in that publication, because I think we really need to identify those as separate infrastructure that really is bringing visitors and tourists to our region. So just wanted some insight from you in relation to that. But thank you for the report.
Councillor, I would probably need to take that one on notice, I'm sorry, but I believe they're in the document without actually having an advert, but I will clarify that. So my understanding is they're in the document itself without, the mountain bike one is in our own facility, so that's, we don't do advertising for that, but, and the other one, if I just may volunteer, the ones that will contribute to their own advertisement, they volunteered to do that, so we've just let them go. But yeah, I'll take that and I'll circulate by email the outcome.
Just thinking about that, the mountain bike trails at Gordon Brook and McEwen Forest, I guess, are public land. Some acknowledgement of them, I think, is important, considering the tourism that's flowing through the region because of it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I'm very pleased to hear that there's been some movement. We're getting some more volunteers, but I'm just wondering, I know the business community, like the KTP, Kingaroy business group, are keen to actually go out and have businesses volunteer in the visitor information centres. I'm just wondering how we can help to facilitate that happening, and talking to other business groups across our region to actually get volunteers from those business groups, because there has been expression of interest from the Kingaroy Chamber. And we're talking to places like Graham House, CTC, Job Match and those sort of places, because I think into the future it would be wonderful to see our visitor information centres open 7 days a week, because they're beautiful facilities, they're fully resourced, but a lot of the times the doors are shut. So I'm just wondering, is there a plan to work with the business groups to try and get some more volunteers?
Councillor, would any assistance in this space would be more than welcome. We have ran campaigns, we have had, I suppose maybe I'm a little bit un-PC, but it's not work for the dole anymore. Employee assistance volunteer through those mutual obligations, sorry. My apologies for the first two. I was just trying to think of the correct terminology. Mutual obligation, we've had mutual obligation people. Chamber, more than welcome. When we were approached by VSB the other week about having their famil in the Nanango Vic, the energy centre, absolutely welcomed it with open arms. So any of those groups, there has been ongoing campaigns, and that information has been circulated far and wide in the past, but happy to give it another burst as well. And if there's a list of specific agencies that you know of that expressed interest, yeah, by all means, please send them through, and we'll send them a personalised, lovely letter saying we'd really love them to attend.
Yeah, so Councillor Duff, would you mind just emailing that through to the CEO in terms of your suggestions there, and we can follow that up? That'd be great. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of work to be done in this space yet. There is opportunity to connect directly with business groups. As you said, Job Match, I know, have spoken with me about the fact that they might be able to help, as has also Graham House. And I wonder whether we should connect with the schools in terms of any of our senior secondary students that might like to get some exposure to what our region offers and some experience in working inside the VICs under the supervision, of course, of appropriately qualified staff. So I think there's plenty of opportunity there for us to reach out to the community. And perhaps, Councillor Duff, if you could articulate some of that to our CEO, we can then progress that work. Thank you. Anything further to add? You're happy with that response, Councillor Duff?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I just think that, as I said before, we need to spend, I think it's going to be energy well spent if we can fill those volunteers spaces in our visitor information centres and hopefully work towards the goal of having them open 7 days a week. Thank you.
I am going to look to wrap this up and go to Councillor Jones as the mover for any final comments before we do. I'm just conscious of time. Look, I just want to say also, I want to acknowledge Minister Hinchcliffe, the Queensland Government Tourism Minister, came to Blackbutt. We had a great day at Blackbutt with the gentleman there who started a penny farthing building business, a bike building business, and he came to Blackbutt because of its location on the rail trail. It was tremendous. We then had a great lunch meeting with Visit South Burnett and the Minister. He went out and also engaged with one of our wineries in the region, and they had the opportunity to share with him their vision for the future. So it was really great to see Minister Hinchcliffe up here. He spent a full day here. I think he'd been away from his family for 13 days, 13 nights straight, and still made the effort to come up here and do this for us in the South Burnett. So a big shout out to Minister Hinchcliffe for the great work he did there. And he's keen to continue to engage. And I also want to acknowledge the work that Visit South Burnett done. They've really hit their straps. President Jason Kinsella, I think, has now really got them into their groove. Melanie's doing a great job, and I think that they are really doing a great job in driving that tourism industry forward. And I want to also acknowledge the work that they've done. Councillor Jones, any final comments as the mover? All been said. Thank you. Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'm going to keep moving because we're almost there. 9.3 is the Boondooma Dam Fishing Stock Association Yellow Belly Competition for 2022. Can be found at page 112. Mr CEO, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, the report's just really by exception. We've offered extensive support over a number of years. The competition's an excellent competition, an excellent event for our facilities. You certainly noticed it this last year in the bookings on site and across the region when it wasn't held. The committee's reached out. They're very concerned about, without going into too much detail now for time, but they're very concerned about the COVID, the implications, the very changing environment. We've got some administrative expertise. We can help them and would be very pleased to help them get back up and running.
Thank you very much, Mr CEO. It's recommended that the committee recommends to Council the South Bennett Regional Council support the Boondooma Dam Fish Stocking Association with in-kind support for the 2022 Yellow Belly competition and delegate the Chief Executive Officer to finalise the assistance. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones. Thank you, Councillor Jones has moved that one. He loves these fishing comps. And seconder, Councillor Duff. Thank you. Any speakers? No, happy to go. Councillor Hedgeham, thank you.
Yes, quickly, Mr Mayor, I hope that this chambers and my fellow councillors remember that I expect that we will be putting a team in this year in the next competition. I'll just bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Councillor Hedgeham. Yep, I think that sounds like a great idea. Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. 9.4, climate risk assessment at 114. Thank you, Mr CEO.
Okay, Mayor, thank you. Again, by exception, this is a work in progress. I've tried to have a little bit of a chat about some of the things we're looking at. Probably how do I best put this so I can be quick? We're in the LGAQ program for climate resilient councils. They've got a guide. We've contacted them through through first the website and then direct. The guide hasn't been released, or we're unable to get a hold of it through the link on their site doesn't work, which sounds strange, but Bron's been chasing up with them on a regular basis trying to get a copy of this thing. So as soon as we get it, hopefully I'll have an electronic copy, we can circulate it. We're looking at our risk framework for next year, just folding it in. It's sort of such a broad brush topic, it spills across many areas. It's the master to many. Happy to take questions, but yeah, it is certainly well in the planning for this next 12 months into the risk assessments and picking up through the climate resilient program.
Mr CEO, it's recommended that the report be noted and received for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconder, Councillor Froloff. Speakers, go to the vote. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you all. Final item on the agenda today is 10.1, questions on notice. We only have one of such, which is in relation to the White Fleet. And can I thank our General Manager for the work that's being done there? And the recommendation is as provided there. Report will be brought back to the December Standing Committee meeting, which I'm very pleased to see. Thank you very much. So we have the recommendation there as presented. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, seconder, Councillor Henson. Speakers? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. I'll now call the meeting closed at 10:38 a.m. Thank you all for your participation. Have a wonderful rest of day. Meeting closed. Thank you.